Hey leaders, ever wonder how a culture of collaboration can be extended in a school beyond the staff team to involve the students and community in co-creating learning opportunities being recognized on a global stage? Well, today we're going to explore a school doing just that.
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. I'm Kurtis Hewson, lead learner and co-founder of Jigsaw Learning. And normally I'd have my wife Lorna sitting beside me, but she sends her regrets as she's traveling back from working with a school today. So in today's episode, we're joined by the leadership team from New Myrnam School, a small rural school with big ideas and a strong sense of community. Known for their collaborative, project-based approach to learning, New Myrnam is a place where students are growing in character, expanding their minds, and gaining the skills to become caring global citizens. You're going to love diving into the work happening at New Myrnam and hear directly from the leadership team about how they're building and sustaining a truly collaborative culture within their school. So let's get started. It's so great to be able to join you for this conversation. So welcome, Danielle, Alyssa, and Rob. Great to see you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for having us.
So, why don't we start off with each of you just taking a moment to share a little bit about your background and your current role at the school?
I'll start if that's okay. My name is Danielle, and I am the principal at New Myrnam School, as well as our Myrnam Outreach and Homeschool Center. It is my third year as principal here, but it's actually coming on to my 10th year here within St. Paul Education. Before that, I took on several roles within Buffalo Trail and St. Paul Education, actually filling out a lot of maternity leave positions. So I've had an opportunity to teach in a lot of different buildings and with different cultures and different approaches from principals. And so I have quite an extensive background that way that I've hopefully brought into the role that I'm working with now.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. How about to you? We'll just keep moving from right to left on my screen. Alyssa?
Alyssa Kalynchuk. I started at the school here basically straight out of university. So 2013, this was my first teaching job, and I've been here ever since. So I started out as a classroom teacher. My background is social studies and educational psychology. And then from there, I was able to jump into a role as a coordinator of student supports, which was right up my alley, and I really enjoyed doing that. And then, so that was back in 2017. Then 2019, I applied for the assistant principal position here at the school and was one of the successful candidates. So I've been in that role ever since and learning the whole time. It's been fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. And Robert, over to you.
Yeah, my name is Robert Tymofichuk, and this is year 35 for me. And I started off in St. Paul in a K-9 school for 14 years. And then I went on to a virtual school and spent probably about 7 or 8 years there. But while I was there, did several things. Like I morphed into a technology coaching job. So I did a tech coach job for about 8 years. That was the most incredible professional development that one could ever have. And then I've been at New Myrnam School since. So this is year 8 for me. The years go. It's all meshes together. If you do the math, it's not going to work out. So essentially been assistant principal for 5 years and math science shop teacher, and never taught shop before until about 8 years ago, and I should have been doing this from day one. It's been an amazing journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So before we dive into the great work happening at the school, could we just give a little bit of our audience a bit of an understanding of where you're located, the grades that are taught at the school, and number of staff and students? Danielle, do you mind giving us just a bit of a picture of the school?
Absolutely. So Myrnam School is a K-12 school. with about 110 students in those classes. What I think is kind of special about our school is under the same umbrella as New Myrnam School, we also have the Myrnam Outreach and Homeschool Center, which we have some parent-directed families, some teacher-directed families, and also some that are doing some shared responsibility work. The really neat part for us is that we actually have a lot of kids who are in the area that are actually learning online, but come in person and join us for some of the project-based work that we do, or they sit in the back of a teacher's classroom and get some extra help while they're teaching, the same class in person as they are online. So we have kind of a neat dynamic there. We've got about 22 staff, including all of our EAs and librarians and librarian and office staff and all of our teachers. So about 10 teachers that we've got here in the school, including the three of us, because in a small school, we definitely teach a lot of classes as well to make sure that we don't have to have those crazy split classes and different complexities there.
Understandable. So I need to share a little bit of a story. It was about 2 years ago when I first met you. Actually, it was right around this time, 2 years ago, being asked to come into the school division to start some work around collaborative response. And Robert, I don't know if you remember that you pulled me aside at one point and were sharing some of the things going on with the school and then said, on your drive home, you might want to check out this podcast. And I went, okay, I've just met this guy and yeah, sure. I need to learn a little bit more about the schools that I'm going to be working with. As I was listening to the podcast, blown away what was being shared. And then I got home and the first thing I did, I don't know if I told you this, is I went onto the website for the school. And then I started scrolling, and I literally mean scrolling as I went through the news articles, the publicity that was going around the school. And then I see this finalist for the top 10 best schools globally that was on there as well. So you need to give us a little bit of background. Could you tell us what makes New Myrnam School so unique as far as the approach the school takes when it comes to student learning? It's being recognized, and I had no idea that this was happening right in our province.
So we entered into, world's best school prize competition,
Yeah.
and they had 250,000 US divided into 5 categories. So there were things like community collaboration, environmental action, and 3 other categories. And essentially, because we've been doing environmental action projects, it seemed like the best fit for us, but it straddled multiple categories. And I was fairly confident that, we should get into the top 10. So I remember our early conversations and sorry, this like Danielle, listen, it was like, Robert, come on, world's best school competition. And we've got a good thing going, but I've been around the block with my tech coaching job, and I know a good thing when I see it. And it's like, hey, we stand a really good chance for that. And sure enough, we ended up getting into an interview process and got shortlisted into the world's top 10. Now we didn't come home with the 50 grand US, but it was the prestige of being recognized. There was one in Canada, which was us. There was 3 in the US. And then the rest was worldwide in countries I haven't even heard about. It's just a humbling experience, to say the least.
Yeah.
And-
well, sorry, go ahead,
Sorry,
Danielle.
Curtis, to like all of that was based on all of the project work that you referenced when you were scrolling, and the podcast that we suggested you listen to. I know exactly which one Robert suggested. All of that came about really because the school was looking, and the division really was looking at closing the high school 10 years ago when I first started. And I mean, when your back's against the wall, you have to figure out a different way of doing things, or nothing's going to change and you're going to lose the high school. And we all know what happens in these small rural communities. When you lose your high school, it just becomes a matter of time before the junior high is gone and before you only have kids K to 6. So realistically, the admin at the time had to make a decision, and the admin at central office in St. Paul Education had to make a decision. Do we invest in this school, or do we kind of let things kind of go the direction that they're going. So the project-based work was an opportunity for the teaching staff to learn how to do things a little differently.
Get uncomfortable.
Learn to collaborate with each other in more of a team atmosphere instead of everyone acting like an island, because we were all on the same team. We all wanted to make sure that the school was here for a really long time.
And the interesting thing, if I can jump in, is the collaboration that happened also with the community, because the village of Myrnam, I think, has a population of like 300 people.
Yeah.
And so the
3 to 5, depending on who, you know.
I grew up in Delia, Alberta. We used to joke that it was 300 if you included pets on the census.
Yeah. Yes. So I think the village also recognized the importance of the school, because if the school closes down, like the public libraries housed in the school,
We lose the community.
we lose the community. So they, you know, the partnership and collaboration that happened outside of the school as well with the community was just amazing and continues to be.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into some of that. But Alyssa, when I was looking at dates and when people arrived, you're the longest standing staff member out of the 3 sitting at the table there. Tell us a little bit about that evolution of joining the school in 2013 to where it's at now.
So when I joined the school, it was the first year that we had a new principal at the school. So we kind of started out together. And so our principal had this vision of, like, you know, what we could try to do to help improve enrollment and improve the collaboration amongst the staff, because we are a small school. So like, I'm the social studies teacher, meaning I'm the only one in the school who teaches social studies. So like,
You're the department of one.
I'm the department. So we had to find creative ways to collaborate with each other. And so we decided to explore project-based learning and cross-grade, cross-curricular. So then that way, it's not just me working on a project by myself. I can meet with the science teacher, the math teacher. We can find curricular connections and across grades. And really, because we teach a multitude of grades, it was such a great opportunity to kind of jump in on that. And being a new teacher at the time, you know, I was straight out of university. I didn't really have the experience of like doing anything else differently. So this was really exciting for me. And seeing seeing the process kind of unravel from start to where we are now was incredible, because it's a big culture change at the school too, for parents, for the community, for the students, for the staff. So seeing the changes over time has just been amazing to see and incredible. And seeing like the payout from doing the project-based learning and what the students have been able to achieve because of the skills that they acquired at the school.
Okay, so on an earlier podcast, earlier this year, I had a guest on, the principal out at Ontario School. His name's Kevin Van Langen, and I can see you nodding there.
Yeah.
And they were in the same place of the school's not sustainable the way it's going, and they had to think differently. So they really embraced their rural roots and recognized, you know, we're in a farming community. How could we work on something? They've reached a place where they've got hydroponics going on, and there's a barn with every type of animal that are being tended to by students, and they've started now creating an international student program to come and increase their enrollment. Like when he was describing, it was insane how much complexity and layers of work that was happening within the building. And when I asked, how do you even get started with that? He said, we started a garden. We started an outdoor garden, which is not unusual. Lots of schools have an outdoor garden. And then they just kept saying, well, what if? So I would love to know, where did this start? Because I know it didn't start with where you're at now. And share with me how it's grown to, when you say project-based learning, what does it look like now within the school? We'll be right back to continue this episode. It doesn't take long for any teacher to realize that explicit expectations and routines are necessary for a large group of students to engage in meaningful activity regardless of what they teach. Although we recognize this is true for any classroom, we don't always take the same care to design careful expectations and routines for adults. We establish a time to meet and clarify a purpose, then bring team members together. Since we are all adults, there is no need for rules of engagement, but very quickly we discover, just like in the classroom, dysfunctions within the team will persist, such as coming late, checking phones consistently, working on sending emails throughout the meeting, along with many others. So how do we guard against this happening? The easy answer is we need to co-develop team norms. Download our free Guide for Leaders to Develop, Sustain, and Reinforce Effective Norms for Team Success. This guide provides you with step-by-step instructions on how to develop your team norms. Access the guide at bit.ly/Team Norms Guide. That's bit.ly/Team Norms Guide. Norms provide the essential foundation for our teams to commit to working together, reflecting on what each team member needs to be successful, and leading to the articulation of an agreed upon set of guidelines assist us when working effectively as a team. And now back to our conversation.
Okay. Well, and I like that question of what does project-based learning look like? Because it's not just a project where you build a diorama in social studies and your teacher sees it and it sits on the wall in the on the counter in the classroom and everybody goes, yay, we did something. Don't get me wrong, there's a place for that and that's great. But the project-based work that we've approached has been much more, there needs to be an authentic audience. So what is the authentic audience? If I'm doing this, what is the purpose of it? And not just to check off a curricular outcome.
Right.
And so when we first started this journey, I will admit that I was not one of the early adopters of yay, let's do this collaborative work, because I had a few years under my belt and a lot of different schools, and I knew how to teach biology 30 and chemistry 20, and that's my jam, and just let me go teach. And so Robert actually was brought in as a consultant, tech coach working for the division. And the principal at the time had him working in my classroom quite a bit, actually. The very first project I collaborated with Robert on was our school's greenhouse. And so we applied for an Inside for Education grant of $10,000 at the time, received it. We had kind of the framework of a greenhouse that some other students had built in shop. I believe they were trying to sell it, but it didn't sell. So the principal said, we'll buy it from you, but we're taking it cheap and just to get it off your hands so you don't have to take it away anywhere. And that became the thing that started all of the, instead of a garden, it was a greenhouse.
The sustainable greenhouse project.
Yeah.
So essentially we can convert that greenhouse into like a year-round greenhouse with no external energy applied to it. So it's all the projects that we've been getting into, they centered around an A+ for energy grant from Inside Education, and it has to involve the environment. That's their structure, so it just became kind of like normal for us. Has to involve the environment. Usually that there's, well, I should say it has to involve energy, and when we involve energy, there's always an environmental tie, always, and it's how it affects the environment. And if you want a really good project, you would choose something that's, again, authentic, that would help out the community. And when you combine those three things together, you've got yourself a good project. And I guess the thing that makes it really good is you choose a project that's really difficult. When you asked 50 or 100 adults from the street of, like how would you do this? And everyone's puzzled, you're onto a good project. So for example, we had a visitor just yesterday at the school, a family that's looking at joining us. And I said, okay, we're doing our project work into the building next door owned by the village called CTEC. And we had a $5,000 grant, so that it started off with a 10 and then it was 5, 5, 5 all the way through. And the challenge to the junior high students was, I want you to make this building net zero from electricity perspective for $5,000. It's almost an impossible task, really impossible. So they did.
And you're asking that of 13 or 14-year-olds. Yeah.
In fact, the podcast that you listen to, and hear little Eddie's going on and on about the HRVs within the CTEC building, and he's advising council. And in that podcast, they end off with, by the way, Eddie is 11. Curtis, I've got goosebumps on coming up right now.
Yeah.
It's like an 11-year-old talking to council on the energy use. So the kids did a forensic energy audit of the building, and then they started to get into like grant writing, reaching out to different agencies, went to an environmental conference, picked up like there was about a 4-hour interview that came out after that. $38,000 later, they ended up building 2 solar arrays, and not a stitch of school money was used. And that building is net zero, by the way. We're actually exporting onto the grid in June, July, August, and September. Just insane. And those kids feel a sense of pride, like it's just this is the world's best school.
Yeah. Okay, so when I had talked to Kevin, he had said, one of the things that's so surprising is people see all of the agricultural connections that are within the school, and the kids come in the morning and the first thing they do is they go out and do chores. They have to maintain the barn and everything going on. And then he said, and the interesting thing is, I'm the principal of the school. I'm tasked with helping to coordinate this. This is the first time I've ever been on a farm in my life. I'm a city kid. I've never done this. So I hear you talking about this and go, "Oh my goodness, I'm totally overwhelmed," because I would need a professional engineer to come in and lead that work, and I know that's not the case. So talk to somebody who would be listening to this and going, "Oh my goodness, how could you lead that work without having a PhD in electrical engineering?"
So you're saying I'm not a professional engineer?
I'm assuming, Robert.
Did you see my YouTube channel? No. Atlantis Diving 1, whole numerical at the end there.
So I think, Kurtis, like a big, I love that, Robert. Thank you. A big piece of that I like ties in hopefully with what this podcast is about, which is that 10 years ago when I started and Alyssa had started with this other principal, he was working really hard to build that collaborative nature among the staff.
Yeah.
So that, and I think the project-based work was sort of the spearhead, like was
Catalyst.
the catalyst, sorry.
Yeah.
The catalyst to really get that moving. Because we as a staff had to work together as a team, because not one person was an engineer or a whatever, and we didn't have the answers of how all of this was going to work. And it is fear-inducing and a little panic-inducing sometimes when you think, oh my gosh, he actually wants us to do this? This is crazy. What are we, like, these are conversations that we had was, this is nuts. What are we expecting these kids to do? I don't know how to do this. How can I help the kids?
And I think that the buy-in for the students as well was that, like, they couldn't turn to the adults because we didn't have the answers. We're like, well, we didn't know. Like,
well,
we have
they
no
used
idea.
to ask, and they says, well, just like tell us how it's done. And
We're like,
the response was like, I'm a tinker, like I'm not an engineer, but I, kind of farm kid, right? Like well-rounded. And my response was, I don't know, but I'll here's what's on my brain. You're more than like, welcome to some ideas, but I don't know. And they said, you don't know?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. And it shifted like a light switch that went on. It's like, oh my God, like we're trying to make like in one of the projects, like there's 7 years of projects, but we're trying to make a building net zero and we don't have the solutions. That's what makes it so authentic and good. And we're actually caused a difference for our community in all these projects.
And so the kids realized that, like, their ideas were, valuable. They had weight, they had importance, and that we're willing to try what they're putting forward, because why not? Like, we have no idea, like, let's give it a shot. And so the authenticity of it was just so incredible. And then coming from a humanities background, like, our students are presenting to village council. So public speaking, like how much more authentic can you get presenting to a council in junior high versus, like, if we did speeches in class, like, it is what it is. But the kids and the interviews that they've done, like, on the fly, like, there's no, like, they're not prepped. They're just talking from experience. So they're so well versed, and, like, the impact that this is having on, like, their future, their career paths potentially, just the skill base that they're bringing with them into society, like, is just incredible.
I always chuckle when the news crews arrive, like CBC. They've got the probably 45-pound camera on their shoulder, and you've got this on the spot interview, and it like we've changed as individuals. I used to really dislike the media. Like I just wanted to be kind of on the side, and because you're being recorded, some of the stuff's even live,
Yeah.
and here it's like you're on the spot. And I tell Danielle, like, people pay good money for PD like this, so get yourself uncomfortable, and the kids, they lapped it up, and it's absolutely incredible. You can have a news crew show up like without warning, and it's like, hey, how do you feel about being on TV today? Oh, sure, Mr. T, that sounds good. And it comes off, it just rolls off.
Yeah.
And you have like, this is like authentic experiences. This is incredible. Talk about a digital footprint for some of these kids. They have their careers made before they leave school, because it's like, here, check me out on here. It's unbelievable.
They're building a portfolio for themselves, like as they go through. We had the Lieutenant Governor request a tour of our school a couple of years ago, because she had seen the kids presenting at the Emerald Awards. Was that correct?
Received an Emerald.
Yeah, I saw that.
She was just enthralled and wanted to come and chat with the kids and see them in their context. So her people reached out to us, and we arranged a date and time for her to come and visit. And so the kids took her on a tour of the school, and it was just incredible to see them leading like a government official around our school, and answering questions and explaining to her what we're doing and what's going on. It was just, yeah.
The visit dragged out quite a bit until I think it was 4:45. And we asked their security person, like, say, oh my goodness, like, we don't want to overstay our welcome. He says, no, she dictates the schedule. And at that, about 10 minutes before she left, she had a chicken underneath her arm, and she was petting the chicken. Like
from our chicken coop
sustainable poultry project.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a wild carpet ride, Kurtis. Really.
Yeah. Okay, so I understand the learning opportunities for students, absolutely, and I want to hear some more about the projects here in a moment, but we know this is also a vehicle for staff collaboration and community collaboration. So can you just walk us through what one of these project-based or the inquiry projects, how they're designed to bring the team together, and then how that shaped your culture within the building?
Sure. So I'll speak maybe to one of our first projects that I got to be involved in, the sustainable greenhouse. A couple of the things that our principal at the time did, and I was reflecting on this actually as I was driving to school this morning, that I don't remember him ever saying, Danielle, you are going to do this. This is going to be your job and your responsibility. Mm-hmm. So let's make it happen. He had a way of sort of talking me through things and just sort of saying, hey, Danielle, Robert's in the building today. He's going to join your class. And he just sort of left everything really open-ended. And then Robert would come in and be very Robert, and jump right in with, oh, I see you're doing this and you should try this. And have you ever thought of getting the kids to do this in your split class? And if you do this as a project, it might tie in both curriculums. And so his enthusiasm sort of spread around to everybody else. So I think that collaboration piece for the staff, for me, it was really important to have the time and space to get comfortable with Robert, and then get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, and then get comfortable with the idea that my science and math grade 7 classes were going to be used, designing this sustainable greenhouse instead of doing the worksheets that I'd worked really hard to, and all my smart notebook lessons that I'd worked really hard to make sure were pristine, that we were just going to push those to the side a little bit. But it had to start slow, and it didn't start with a dictation. Because I think if the principal at the time, I think if Keith Gamblin had said, Danielle, you're doing this, you're in charge of this, I think I would have just panicked and gone, no, I'm tapping out. Like I've only been here for a year. This is way more than what I signed on for. I had no idea. You have to get the right people in the right places at the right time. And some people need to get off the bus.
Get on the bus or get off the bus, because the bus is moving. And it's not how you ask for it's not what you ask for, it's how you ask for it. From an admin level, that our life revolves around relationships with the staff, relationships with the students, relationships with the community. And if you're cognizant of the relationship piece that carries you through like a lot of things, even the trust part. Like working with Danielle and really enjoyed the time with her and found out what she was teaching, how she was teaching it, and hopefully had her in a safe place to say, hey, let me do some of the heavy lifting on this, and then it's like a rubber band that goes back and forth between kind of uncomfortable and growing, and uncomfortable and growing, and that's how. Good learning occurs.
And even with the app, because we had to apply for the grants for the projects. And so the way that we structured this was we would meet as a staff, like K to 12, and we would come up with some ideas of, okay, so here's the project idea. Like, how can you see your class getting involved? And what are the curricular ties that your grade level has to this project? And so as a team, we were going through our curricula and looking at, okay, here's how this can tie in, here's how this can tie in, and like, here's how we can be connected. And so on some of our projects, they truly were K to 12. Like we would meet, I'm a junior, senior high teacher. My junior high students and senior high students would be working with elementary students, and like they would bring something different to the table. So like the elementary students might come up with like ideas of how, I'm thinking about the projects that we did about renewable, like some of the renewable energy projects. And so what are forms of biofuel that we could have access to in our area? And then so they would bring up ideas. The junior and seniors would then like do the research for the ideas, and then we would meet again as a group, K to 12, and talk about what some of the findings were, and then kind of like go from there and come up with some prototypes and trials and stuff like that. But it truly was cross-grade, cross-curricular. And then as a humanities teacher, like the kids are working on looking at like laws and proposals and environmental impacts. Robert was also working with me as a tech coach when I was first started at the school. And I remember that we developed this project in my social 10 class. Basically, like it spans a whole unit. There's 4 units in social 10, spans a whole unit, and it's all tied to energy basically, but it meets all of the curricular outcomes, and it's relatable to the kids, because in Myrnam we're primarily farming, but there's oil in our area as well. Oil and oil farming, those are our main industries, I think. So the kids, it was relevant for the kids, and like it just goes from there. Like we just have so many connections and so many opportunities to collaborate with teachers and with students alike.
So I'm really hearing with this too, that idea of getting really clear on the why. And I love that the why was so personally invested of, do we want this school in this community? If so, then we need to do something. Like the why is crystal clear. But I'm curious then, Robert, you mentioned it's not how you ask it, but how you ask. What do you feel have been some of the conditions that prior at Min and you currently as a leadership team have put in place to be able to really ensure that that people can be comfortable being really uncomfortable?
So I want to, like, when I was a tech coach, it was not only with St. Paul School Division, but it was I had a secondment for 2 years under Learning Network, so I'd get bounced around the province. Sometimes in Calgary, Sunchild, Alexis, Bonnyville, Coal Lake, Smoky Lake, all over the place. And it's very interesting because there were some schools that I'll call open schools and some that are closed schools.
Mm-hmm.
And in a closed school environment, not only the physical doors were closed, during time, the kids would come in and they do their thing and they open up the door and they let them out. But there was, when you go into the staff room, there was never conversations about, what are we doing today? Oh, I've got this great lesson, we're doing blah, 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 blah. Like that's in an open school. And some of those closed schools, you'd have people in the staff room and it's like, there's the Oilers game this weekend and, how's the weather? And it wasn't about what was going on within the school.
That old idea of we don't talk shop in the staff room. I'm a huge proponent of why wouldn't you? This is the exciting stuff about what we do.
Absolutely. And the whole thing too about that was there's a kitchen sink story that I'm going to tell you about. While I was working in those schools, it sounds crazy, but the staff room sink tells a story for the school. just if you looked at the staff room sink and nothing else. The closed schools would have dirty dishes in the sink, and there's a lot of griping going on with, oh, it's so-and-so's turn this week to go clean that stuff up, and grum, 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 grum. The open schools, because of the culture of collaboration, if Alyssa's or Danielle's plates in the sink, I will gladly clean that. In fact, I want to clean it, and I want to help them out. And I know they would do the same thing for me. And the conversations that go on in the staff room are rich, and they're exciting, and the way it should be. And it's the teachers too, when we can sometimes release them, it's like, hey, I'll take over your class. Go check out so-and-so right now. They've got some really cool things going on. To have another teacher into your classroom, or EA or another adult, it's no big deal. And that's what you'd want to have as an open type school, where they're open to ideas and open to say it's okay to take risks. We had one of the science teachers that essentially gave a challenge to. We had to move this greenhouse probably about 50 or 60 yards down the back alley, and it by necessity, that I didn't want it moved by mechanical means, because the skids underneath probably weren't the greatest condition. And I challenged the science teacher, and I said, you're learning about wheels and levers and simple machines. Yeah. And I said, your challenge is to move this 4,000-pound greenhouse 50 yards and turn it a quarter turn.
With your grade 7 students.
With junior high.
But to be fair, so like that sounds panic inducing. Okay. So for Miss Yurchuk at the time, it wasn't her first sort of foray into project-based learning. She'd sort of done a few things. She'd done some stuff with the community. She was a foods teacher and had done some harvest meals, we called them, and people could order these meals that then are food, right? So she'd done some authentic connection with the community and with the staff. But she definitely hadn't been here very long. So something else that I would say about collaboration and some of the work we've done is you have to find those people who are first to jump on board and say, be a little crazy and be a little, the early adopters. To be a little more open to being uncomfortable, because we have other staff members that if we'd have done that to them with very little experience with the project-based learning, they probably would have quit and been out the door in no time. So it wasn't her first time with that idea of a project-based approach, but it's terrifying at first. And she stood around kind of I talked to her a few days beforehand, and she was like, how am I going to do? What do I do? And so because the rest of us had been through it and we have an open system, she felt comfortable enough to come to myself and Robert and say, I'm uncomfortable with this. I don't know how to do it. The answer wasn't, no, I don't want to do it. So she's the right person.
There's a difference between that response, right? A difference between help me versus I'm putting this on to somebody else.
Yeah. And my response was, hey, I'll be there with you. And we're not going to be doing the work. The kids are going to be doing the work.
Yeah. And actually all of us were there. It was awesome.
It was unbelievable, because they had originally, they tried, kind of to lift it up, and the building wasn't lifting, and they ended up breaking this big beam. And I a little bit of coaching, you do with them and say, hey guys, if you take this 4x6 and you turn it a quarter turn, it's actually stronger on this side. And I says, if you do this right, the lightest student in the entire class is going to lift up that building. Mr. T, no, that's not possible. Sure enough, this little gal, probably, 83 pounds soaking wet, she ends up getting on the end of this 16-foot long lever, and they had the fulcrum in the right spot, and it moved a little bit, like it lifted up a bit. And then we all tried to place these rollers underneath, so it went up and up and up until we got on the rollers. And then we tried to push, and it didn't move. It did not move. And then there was, we ended up getting the tug of war rope, out of the gym, attaching it onto the front, and that way that there was enough, kind of places to grab onto this. And the thing moved probably about a foot. And the kids went wild. It's like, we can do this.
Well, and that piece, Miss Yurchuk wasn't doing the work completely by herself. She had us helping her there beforehand. And then through the process, Robert was mentoring that sort of the language that you would use. He was mentoring that with her the whole time. without really meaning to. He was just physically there, being able to say, well, what do you guys think? Well, how do you think this would happen? I think
Critical
we have,
thinking skills.
I think we have, like, do we have anything that we could attach to the front that we could use to pull? And like, it was the kids that came up with it, but Miss Yurchuk was then able to hear that mentoring piece from Robert. And I think that now that we have enough staff kind of onboarded that way with our project-based approach, that mentorship still becomes a really important piece of making sure that we connect the right people in the building to help each other out and connect them with someone who's going to lift them up and give them that support that they need.
Yeah, and put the onus on the kids. They're capable, junior high, extremely capable, and make it authentic. And they ended up moving that building the 50, 60 yards, and they turned it a quarter turn. It was perfect. And I think to this day, 30 years or 40 years from now, they're going to remember and say, we moved that thing. Do you remember that? How many things do you remember out of high school, right?
Yeah.
Or out of junior. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I love this. So I do have to share that a few months ago, my wife and I are sitting. It was a Saturday morning. We're watching the news. We both have laptops out and doing just a little bit of quasi work as we're sitting there. And then boom, Robert, you're up on global news. And I did the elbow my wife. I know that guy, whatnot. And I think it was that it was a hovercraft that had been developed and created for you. So I'd love to know what have been some of the projects that the school and those connected to the school have been able to accomplish over the number of years. You mentioned the net zero facility and the sustainable greenhouse. What other things has the school been able to accomplish? We'll be right back to continue this episode. Do the people in your organization function as a group or a team? We used to use these words interchangeably, but discovered there's a significant difference when we operate as a group versus when we operate as a team. So, what's the difference? Access the Are We a Group or a Team activity to engage your staff in understanding if they are functioning as a group or team, part of our Collaborative Leaders Toolkit series. In this workshop guide, you'll clearly define the impact of working as a team and the conditions necessary to establish those effective teams. This workshop guide is yours for only $9, and you'll receive everything you need to lead your staff, including workshop slides, participant handout, step-by-step instructions for leading this activity, as well as suggestions for next steps and possible extension suggestions. Go to bit.ly/J group team to access, or search for it under the resources tab on jigsawlearning.ca to learn more about this valuable resource to reinforce why we need to be working in teams to ensure success for each and every learner. And now back to our conversation.
So the word of advice for anyone listening to this is go under newmyrnamschool.ca, and you'll see a nice little tab, and it'll say project-based learning, or our projects.
Yeah.
And there's the last 7 years of our life in beautiful little, it'll say year 1, sustainable greenhouse project, a little blurb, about a 20-minute video, year 2, designing renewable energy systems. That one was, if you watch any video, that's the one you probably want to get into. And that definitely was rich from like grade 4 to grade 12. And it took all those collective brains and brain power to pull that one off. And then that was like, talk about ambitious projects. That was a really wild one. And then,
in that one, the kids formed into Team Wind, Team Solar, Team Biofuel, I think I read.
Yes, but even crazier yet is again Mr. Gamlin, the principal of the school, now our current superintendent, associate superintendent. That's who Danielle was referring to earlier as the principal of the school. He said, "You guys go build an eco classroom, which is essentially like a off-grid classroom. It's like a big greenhouse, but it's good sized building." That's the one that we're actually the story that we had to move it from place to place. Mm-hmm. And then after that was all built, or concurrently, he says, okay, we're going to have a team wind that's going to build a wind turbine from scratch, like right down to the blades of the wind turbine that were pieces of sewer pipe that we got from the village, and we crafted them and balanced them and ordered in a big old DC motor from a 1970s computer, for the generator part. And they built a 30-foot tower that we put into the schoolyard. And honest to goodness, we got away with it for a little, for a bit. We took it down after a couple of weeks just due to safety concerns, because when the blades would spool up, it was perfectly balanced, but you couldn't see the blades. It was just amazing, and it kicked out a lot of power. And then we took a grain auger, Team Solar, and converted this grain auger into a solar tracker that would track the sun from east to west, and it had seasonal variation because you could adjust the height of the auger. And at the same time, there was a Team Biofuel project, and essentially one of our high school kids pulls up one day with a horse trailer full of manure, and these kids come running out and they're scooping the manure in from the horse trailer into a container, and they build a bioreactor. And we were supposed to make methane that would be run into a generator so we could power the eco classroom. And they were investigating the 3 ways of energy production, and then look at how effective it was. And we found out that there's very little wind here. Like you'll have 24 hours of wind and then nothing for 2 weeks. And then take the recommendations and then bring it to Village Council and make a recommendation for the CTEC building. And they did. And then a year later, another project ended up taking the first grid-tied solar, about 6 kilowatts, onto the CTEC roof. That later on, what I was telling you about, added another 2 solar arrays onto it to make that building into a net zero facility. But all these things have fit together, and it was absolutely incredible, ambitious project. So on that page, you'll see the 7 years of what we got into, taking a school bus and converting it into a net zero tiny home, taking a fleet of electric golf carts that were ready for the landfill and making them into renewable energy vehicles like solar panels on top. There was a video series that we did, and check out the media links on that page, because it is inconceivable. Like in the last about 2.5 years, the amount of media attention that's been on, it's been something. But I'll let Alyssa talk about one of the last projects was called Carrying Our Legacy Forward.
Yeah, so that was a pretty incredible project. I had a grade 12 class, was it last year, who was actually, they were in grade 7 when we kind of started with this project-based initiative. So they had seen and experienced the whole gamut of projects. So I had them in my social 30 class, and one of our outcomes was looking at sustainable prosperity, or not sustainable prosperity. We were looking at ways to kind of like be global citizens. And so we looked at this question, and it was kind of posed, we posed it with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so we looked at the Sustainable Development Goals, and we said, okay, you guys, like let's think about what we've done as a school over the last how many years, and let's see like if we can match our projects to some of these goals. And so that's what we did as a class. So it was really reflective. The kids got to go through all of the videos and see what they've done and achieved in their junior and senior high career. And then they got to see like how could these projects impact the global community. And how would they help achieve some of these UN sustainable goals? And then we created a video. So the kids were able to write the script. It was totally like hands off from me. Like I gave the kids some guiding questions. They wrote the script. They had to learn how to use like recording equipment. Because I have no idea how to do any video recording. So they were like using this Osmo thing. And we had like these fancy mics so that the wind wouldn't interfere with the sound quality. And then they had to kind of, we had a junior high student and Mr. T collaboratively kind of put the videos together into the final footage that we see on the website. But it was such an amazing opportunity for the grade 12s to look at how what they've done through the span of their junior senior career has what it was and how it could impact the global community. Like it was just, pretty powerful video at the end for sure.
Well, and just even hearing you speak to this I don't know anything about the recording aspect of this. The excitement I would have in that space is we're all learning together and solving problems that no one person knows how to figure out, but together, let's chart a path on how we could figure this out.
And one of the kids that helped Mr. T kind of put the video together, he was in grade 7 at the time.
So he's working with the grade 12s as an advisor.
So like we had our script, we had everything planned out, the kids were ready to go. And so we are filming this clip with the school bus, and the grade 7 student says, hey, you know what? It's like, what if you guys walked along the tiny home school bus and talked about like what you're like showed the camera what you're talking about in your script. But in doing that, you would have to like they wouldn't be able to read off of the cue cards. They would have to verbatim as they walk along the school bus. And so he put the challenge forward to the grade 12s. And one of the grade 12 boys who was responsible for filming that part was like, yeah, just give me a couple minutes. Like, let me read through. And so he read through his script and he's like, okay, I got it. And it took a couple of tries, but he got it very quickly. And it was actually a richer dialogue than what he had on his script. And he met the challenge, and this grade 7 student was like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's what we needed. It was just so like for the grade 7 to be able to tell the grade 12, hey,
I was going to say, I just got goosebumps now of
yeah.
that's not a dynamic that is usually well received in a lot of school situations.
No, absolutely. Like, and the grade 7 student was very confident in it. The grade 12 was very respectful. And in the end, like it was a much better clip, the way that the grade 7 student had suggested. So it was just, yeah.
And that story to me is, I've heard it before and I love it every time, but it's sort of a dipstick check on what the culture of the school is like. Where you can have kids like that respectfully making, there's no teacher or adult coordination to make sure that this is a respectful, situation in that place. But the staff are, again, so open with each other, and there's such strong relationships, I think, between staff members, and just such a positive atmosphere for us as people who are working here.
Well, I'm not think of the modeling that happens for the
the modeling that's happening for kids. Yeah,
so exactly. The kids see us collaborate, and they're very open to collaborating with each other, regardless of there's no status, there's no age, age groups, age limits. Like they're all working together in a respectable and productive way.
Not a hierarchy.
No,
like it's a collective team.
Yeah,
it really doesn't matter what grade you're in. Thank you.
Well, and this to me really speaks to that ethos of why we collaborate, is that the room's smarter than any one person within the room. So I'm curious, when I came into the school division 2 years ago, it was with the idea of how can we explore this framework referred to as collaborative response to continue to help support schools. And I'm curious, what has been your thoughts and work through doing this? Because it would be very easy for your school to say, thanks, but we're already collaborating really well. Is there components of that work that's aligned or even help to further some of the efforts that are happening in the school?
Absolutely. I think that I listened to your interview with John Braga from your school division. And I agree with him that when you're in a small school, sometimes there's a lot of discussion about always that one kid or that those frequent flyers all the time. And what I like about the way that we're starting to collaborate differently is that when we are together talking about not necessarily the projects, like we have a really good collaborative environment. But when we're talking about individual student achievement or academics very specifically, it really does in a small school become, well, I want to talk about this kid, and it's always the same kid every time.
And then someone in the room is, I taught his brother. I remember when his mother came to the school.
Yes. And then and the conversation gets so diluted from what you really need to talk about. And really that kid probably doesn't need a whole case consult conversation about just that one kid. And I've really appreciated kind of the language around thinking about different strategies for different tiers of what does that kid really need? Is this a tier 1 response? Do we need to make sure what are our foundational, what do we need to do for every single kid? And it becomes interesting because we don't all agree necessarily on what those main foundational rocks are. So it's been a really interesting conversation that way.
And I think the response from staff has been really positive because with the collaborative response model, like it's very efficient. It's very structured. It's very efficient. And so I think the staff are appreciative of that because with everyone having like, with the roles and the timekeeper and having, the pre-meeting organizer, and the agendas, everyone knows what to expect when we meet for this meeting. And so like it just flows so nicely. So when we meet, every other week for an hour, doesn't seem like a chore because like we're actually getting stuff accomplished. And then when we meet again, we can check back in and say, okay, like how did these things work out? These next steps that we developed at our last meeting, how did they work out? Like where do we need to go from here? And it just seems to be like just so powerful and so rich.
Yeah, the meetings have been I'll call it laser focused compared to in the past of doing things. Keeps everyone on track, including myself, because I'll get on stories or whatever, and they'll get interrupted. Rob, no. Okay, yeah.
We have to sometimes.
Start tucking your ego a little bit there, and away you go. And the cool part too is like when you are talking about that one student, it really, when you look at a universal design, the continuum supports like it does apply to like many students, and I think that makes our system better because of that. And yes, there are some almost case conference things where it's down to a student, but not like the bulk of it, right? And there's a lot of things we need to be aware of, and it'll be like, oh, you can do that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's been good.
And that's the powerful part too of being a K-12 school is when we started our meetings, we met because we're such a small teaching staff. We met as a whole school, like all of our teaching staff together. And so like, coming from the high school realm, we can address this issue that we're seeing, in our junior, senior high students. And then our elementary teachers will say, hey, well, I have a strategy that you could try that would help address that issue. Because they're teaching, the foundational, and we're teaching like, the reading to learn and stuff like that. And so it might be things that we don't think about as a junior, senior high teacher that the elementary teacher is like, yeah, like we do this all the time. This could work in your junior, senior high class. So it just leads to like, the collaboration across grades so that we're not islands anymore. We're all working together.
Awesome. Okay, well, I do want to wrap up here as we move along, and I want to turn to each one of you for a thought of if you were to give advice to your past self in regards to creating just a robust culture of collaboration that you obviously have at the school, what advice would you give yourself that would be valuable for another leader to be able to hear when they're trying to think about how do I create this culture like what I'm hearing here today?
Given this quite a bit of thought the last 3 years, I came into this role without any real administrative experience. And sort of feeling like I had to be everything to everyone. And no matter what was happening in the school, no matter what meeting or whether it was collaborative response or a project, I had to have my hand in it. And so I think what I would offer up is when you're building that collaborative, or you're building, that collaborative team and trying to build that culture, remember that doesn't mean that you need to micromanage everything. And in fact, you shouldn't. Because
trust your people.
Trust your people to do the work, because that way when I'm not in the room, then that process is still there. And so that's something that I have learned over 3 years. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. I like
And
that.
for me, I think just, being open and receptive to feedback and to collaboration is key. I think that, kind of like what Danielle was talking about, hearing perspectives from everyone is so crucial, because if, as a leader, if you dictate to somebody, you must do this, like chances are you're going to be met with some resistance. But if you say, what do you think about, and you have a more open way of communicating, then you're showing that you're open to feedback and to ideas, and then that's how you get people engaged and willing to do some collaborative work together.
Mm-hmm.
The part that I'd like to talk about is relationships and involving people. And everyone is here, they care, and put trust in those people to do things, and ask questions, and say, I've been thinking about this, but what are your thoughts? And then, how can we do this? And next thing you know, that you're drawing them into that circle, and it's person by person by person by person, and you get this critical mass, if you want to
Yeah,
call it.
that's
where you,
exactly where I was going in my thought
yeah,
process.
and once the critical mass is there, the administrators, really they could be gone, and the building will self-sustain. The system will thrive, and it's because of that empowering people to work together to get the job done, and they care immensely. And that's one thing, when we're hiring, we're looking for people that are, good work ethic. They care a lot, and they're open. And essentially, that's kind of where we are right now. It is an incredible place.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I so much appreciate it. And I will ask anyone watching or listening to this, definitely check out newmyrnamschool.ca, and I'll make sure it's attached in the notes as well. And we also have your email addresses if anyone's interested in reaching out further. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for what you're doing for not just your students and your staff, but your community. It's outstanding.
Thank you,
Thanks
Curtis.
for
Thank you,
service.
Curtis.
Thank you for having us.
So this is one of these conversations that I know Lorna would have loved to have been a part of when you see the incredible passion and excitement that comes, and again, it's about creating that culture of what if. What if we could accomplish this, and how could we do that? And there's a few things that I take away from this. The first off is getting really clear on the why. I don't think there's any more powerful why in a school community to say we're not going to exist as a school unless we try something different. And to be able to say, all right, we obviously don't have a game plan for this, or else we would have put it in place already. What could we do? And relying upon the expertise. And I loved what Robert shared there about, trust the people doing good work. And as Danielle mentioned, don't micromanage that. But if we can establish the why, then we can get behind that. I love that idea of asking questions and bringing in people's voices, building up that one person at a time, as Robert says, till we have that critical mass that can continue to exist. I love the notion of it's not what you ask as a leader, but rather how you ask. And I think that's a really powerful way of reflecting on how we are communicating and engaging and asking our teams to engage in what we know is difficult work. And when we're asking people to become uncomfortable, it's important how we go about having that conversation. And once again, the idea that we're not going to build this culture overnight. We're going to start slow, but then success begets success. The idea that as we see success, let's celebrate. And New Myrnam does a great job of looking for opportunities to celebrate throughout. And if that involves bringing people in to help in for that celebration, fantastic. That just continues to create the fuel for what we're doing as we move forward. So I really encourage everyone, check out the website, reach out if you have questions for Danielle, Alyssa, and Robert. Really appreciate the conversation. And it just comes back to that understanding that the reason that we engage in this work is it's going to help support students. But in this case, it's about supporting community and the real health of a rural community in this particular case. So as always, please like, share, subscribe. Love to be able to continue to share out these incredible stories that are coming from people doing great work and seeing it as how we can exist to support one another. With that, wishing you all the best, and I know Lorna would want to make sure that I include, see you soon.
Jigsaw Learning, founded by Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, is a team of educators who work with schools, districts, and educational leaders to establish collaborative response to ensure success for all students. Because every child deserves a team.